Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Game Grumps. Check out my freaking custom Kotobukiya Megaman X. Yes, Megaman tuned up all the way to X. This is the cool adult Mega Man. This ain't your mama's Mega Man, alright? This guy's taller, he's broader, he's a little bit more badder. He's got a bit of a scowl to him. And I'm excited to just tear right into him, so let's freaking get to it. So, like I said, this is a Kotobukiya model kit, which means it's gonna be good, but I feel like, I don't know, man. Maybe it's just me, but a couple of Kotobukiya model kits I've taken a look at, they seem to be not quite Bandai. That's all I'm gonna say. I'm not gonna say they're good, I'm gonna say bad. It's just Bandai's Bandai, Kotobukiya's Kotobukiya, they're a little different, but still good. So, what I mean by that is, I feel like Bandai is pretty good about keeping the seam lines to a minimum, right? I feel like anytime I see a kit from Bandai, there's always like that one spot that has seam lines. But on this one, it just kind of feels like they're everywhere. Am I crazy? Does it feel like this thing is just filled with seams? And they could have been handled. I could have taken care of them. I could have gotten rid of them. I just didn't want to. That's really what it comes down to. There was some work to be done. I didn't want to do it. So I didn't. And I didn't think it was going to bug me as much as it kind of is. And the reason being is I did the Mega Man X4 armor many years ago, and I didn't bother with the seam lines on that, and I didn't think anything of it. And the reason is I feel like the Mega Man armors, because they're so segmented with a lot more different colors and parts going on, it hides the seam lines way better. Whereas this one is pretty simple. It's just a pretty standard, just 2-3 color kind of guy, and the seam lines seem to really stick out for me. So that's something I kind of wanted to point out. I also feel like part of it was the design and engineering, especially on the forearms. I don't know why those forearms couldn't just be one single piece that just slid on and off like a sleeve. Instead, they made it 2 separate parts that have to clasp together, and yeah, that causes issues. That's where the seams come from. So, a bit unfortunate, but something to keep in mind for the future. Like I said, I think I could have dealt with these seams and been happy with it, but just due to laziness and wanting to get this done sooner than later, I just said screw it. Seam lines don't really bug me all that much, so let's just do it. But in this one, they kind of do. I feel like they're sticking out just a little too much, but enough about that. We don't gotta talk about that no more. Just know that it's on my mind. Other than that, there wasn't a lot of prep or anything done for this kit. I just kind of painted it up, and that was that. I did pick out a few minor spots where there was some masking that needed to be done. Thank goodness I saw somebody's video. I really wish I could remember, but I saw somebody's video where they were just showing off their Mega Man X Armor 1, and they pointed out the fact that the upper part of the bicep needed to be in that gray color to match the rest of the kit. And I didn't notice that until I was already working on this kit. So I was like, thank goodness I saw that video. I just happened to be like, oh, let me just take a look at this guy's video. And there you go. I caught that, masked off the upper part of the biceps. You see that there's that gunmetal color. It's like a ring around the arm. That looks much better now. If I had just left it, would have been fine. But it's nice to add in those little bits of details where you can. Same thing with the bottom of the feet. I did a little bit of masking on the bottom of the feet here as well. There's some gunmetal and some silver that I threw in. I just thought that would help spice it up a bit. Again, it's the bottom of the feet. Never gonna really see it, so it's not that big a deal, but it's just nice to do. Now, in terms of this overall kit, there is flat colors, there is metallic colors, and then there is the jewels. I don't know what you want to call them, the clear colors, the red bits. So we've got 3 different kind of textures going on, and I think they all work. The problem is with those red jewels, clear parts completely depend on light to have a vibrancy to them. In order for you to see what's going on and to enjoy the effect, we need light piercing through them to make them kind of glow. And it works mostly fine for the buster and the ear parts in the bottom of the feet, but the forehead and the back of the head have some jewels that just don't have any light filtering through them, and it's kind of dull, and I kind of wish I just did that candy coated. On the one hand, I don't think it looks bad because I do really like clear effect parts because I like that sort of, like I said, jewel kind of crystal vibe to them. It's like a very glassy texture to it that I think works really well, but the problem is, like I said, it's just very dull because of the lack of lighting that goes into them. Moving on with the future of my Mega Man builds, I'm probably just gonna, at least for the forehead forehead stuff and some of the chest plates have them as well. Probably just gonna paint them up because, I don't know, there's something just a tad lacking there. I did try to paint the back panels of them silver to help brighten them up, and I think that's why the ears, the bottom of the feet, and the buster work so well. I didn't paint the forehead jewel because the shape of the design on the back plate, it just would have not worked. There's just too many parts in the way that you wouldn't have gotten that effect, so I just didn't bother with it. Who knows, maybe if I did paint it, we would get a little bit more vibrancy to it. That could be an issue, but I'm just not so sure. I did also paint the inner rim of the Mega Buster as well as the bottom of the feet and the ears. I decided to make those silver. I thought that would help break things up a bit, and I feel like I'm mostly right. Honestly, silver on gunmetal, it's just so hard to distinguish. I've noticed on a few different builds where I've painted silver on top of gunmetal or silver on top of another type of silver, something like that. It's just so hard to notice the difference, but when you get up close, you can kind of tell. It's just a very subtle trick of the eye. In terms of the main blue for this kit, in the instruction manual, it said to use bright blue with some white. And for some reason, I completely forgot about the use of white. I painted dark blue for the shading and then used bright blue on top. That didn't work at all. The dark blue just ate up the bright blue on top, so you couldn't really see anything. So I have this custom blue in my backlog that's just made up of a bunch of different lighter blues. I mixed that into it, and that definitely helped, but I decided it wasn't enough, and I gave it one more lap with some white mixed in, and I still think this isn't quite the blue that I envisioned for X, but it looks much better than my original version because it was just a little too dull. I feel like X is a much more brighter color than some of the other Mega Man designs. Could just be me, but when I look at the box art and all that, it seems like it's a very, almost like greenish blue. Like it's very much brighter, it's very much more noticeable than on some of the other designs. So I wanted to keep that in mind, but at the end of the day, I still think this looks very good and it's hard to complain about it. That being said, if I did ever get another one down the line just to try it again, because like I said, the seam lines were a bit rough. They're much more noticeable than I expected. I feel like the panels don't line up as much as I was hoping they would. And then also, like I said, the jewels, I would probably paint those. So there's a lot of ideas that I probably would try differently if I could do this again. So who knows, maybe I will do it again. The light blue, pretty much perfect. I really don't know what else I could do differently to improve it. It's basically just like a light blue that's kind of dark, if that makes any sense. There's a thickness to it that you can see that I sprayed on first, and then I used an even lighter blue than that. That was, like I said, not quite as thick. It's a lot lighter. Even though they're both bright blue, it's just a different shade of bright blue in the spectrum that helps change things up, and I really like how that came out. Again, couldn't really do it any better than this. I think this is pretty solid for what it is. Maybe there's something I can try in the future, I don't know, but for now, when I think about painting up my Mega Man kits in my backlog, this is pretty much the way I'm going to go. I'm just going to copy paste this formula and do it over again, because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's kind of the mentality I'm going with. I do like to try to change things up. I don't really like using the exact same colors every time for all my builds. I think that would be very boring, but also if something works, I don't know, it's kind of hard to change things just for the sake of changing things. For example, with the blue that I did for this Mega Man X, I definitely would want to use the same concept when I do, for example, Master Grade Wing Gundam. I think that blue works really well for this. However, I wouldn't add in the white. I'd probably keep it more to the darker side just to keep things A, different, but B, I think it would work for that design better in that way. So just kind of where I'm at with my mindset when I'm deciding on colors and painting and how to go about it and all that. So originally the gunmetal colors were pretty much that. They were gunmetal, but like flat plastic gunmetal. So what I did was I wanted to break things up. I didn't want to do everything in just a flat coat, so I like having different layers of colors and textures and stuff going on. So I used Alcalad gunmetal with aluminum silver and mixed those together. And I used very little on the silver and just kept the gunmetal heavier, just because on this particular design, all those parts were meant to be kind of black or dark gray anyway. So I figured I'd go heavier on the darker color rather than brightening it up, and I'm glad I did. I think if this had been in a lighter gunmetal color that I do on some of my other inner frames, it wouldn't have worked as well. It would have been a little too obvious, or stood out a little too much, and I don't think I would have been happy. But with this, it looks pretty much perfect. Again, this is another one of those circumstances where I don't know if I could do it any better than this. Pretty much where I wanted to be, especially for the Mega Buster and then like the strips on the forearm and then the little joints that are sticking out on the knees and the elbows. I think the color works really well there for being darker. So there's a couple of purple bits on the back and shoulders that break up the armor, and I guess they're purple. I don't really know what the right color is for that. I see it as purple, I see it as blue, I see it as a combination of both. It's just kind of hard to pinpoint that very specific color there for those plates. So what I decided to do is I looked in the instruction manual. It said to use white with just a little bit of clear purple mixed into the white to get that type of color. I didn't want to do that exactly, so I first originally used straight purple out of the bottle for the shading process for the first layer, and then I added white into the mix just to brighten it up and then use that for highlighting. I thought that was good enough, but it wasn't correct. So at first I wouldn't have done anything to it. That being said, looking it over, I thought to myself, well, if I had added a dull blue, that could have helped blended the colors a bit better together. Because this whole kit is blue, I think adding blue of any kind would have helped. So I was just kind of in the back of my head thinking like, well, if I were to do this again, that's how I would have done it. That being said, I had an issue with top coating where I did have to redo these purple parts completely. I had to strip them down to the plastic and redo the whole process. So I said, screw it, we're gonna have to redo it anyway, and let's try that out. And I'm much happier with it. I don't think it's perfect. I think I probably should have added more blue into the mix, but it's fine, it looks good. At least it doesn't stand out too much. And I think having just a little bit of purple does help break things up in a nice way. So on the one hand, it's definitely not bad. On the other hand, I think it does look kind of good. So we're just going to be satisfied with what we got. The white on the hands, I am extremely happy with. I wanted to try something different. I didn't want to do straight gray for shading and then just do white for highlighting on top of it. That's what I normally do for my Gundams because I feel like it works for them. But for this design in particular, I don't really like the fact that the white hands stick out all that much. I do think it's a nice touch to help break up the color scheme overall because, again, this is supposed to be like an enhanced Mega Man. There's a lot more going on with his design and his mechanics and all that, so it's cool that they do something to differentiate them even further, but I don't know if white was necessarily the right way to go. That being said, the parts came out of the box as white with a seafoam tint to them. It was a very subtle tint on them mixed into this plastic, and I wanted to replicate that because I thought it looked really good. So the instruction manual said just to use a straight white, even though there was definitely some color mixed into this plastic. I took some, basically a seafoam green type of color, sprayed the parts with that, found another color that's basically like a toothpaste white, like a very minty toothpaste, very light green. So it is like a greenish tinge, but very light so. And then by applying that on top as a highlighting color, that really helped break things up and give it some nice shading and layers and contours. So that way it gave it a natural glow to it. Because the thing is, because these hands are in motion, there's movement, there's curves, we have to keep in mind that there's going to be light and shadows bouncing off everywhere, so I wanted to keep that in mind as I shaded everything, and I think it worked out beautifully. The very brightness of the mint green on top of the like seafoam green, even though they're not white, because of that effect of how they blend together, it gives you a white feeling to it. That's something to keep in mind that I've noticed with coloring and painting that I've done on other things, is where if you take any color and then take that same color, dial it up all the way and just make it as bright as possible, it's almost as if it's white. It's not white, but it gives you that vibe where you can pass it off and make it work. So that's something I have to keep in mind. It's an interesting thing that I learned about this kit. One major issue that I have is, I mentioned before, I used Alkalads for the gunmetal colors, and I'm noticing that there's a lot of chipping on those parts. There's definitely chipping on every part just from posing and everything. I'm noticing that some of the paint is rubbing off on other parts and all that, which is, it's annoying, but it's gonna happen. But in terms of this Alkalad gunmetal, I think I mentioned it before, but their paint is a little bit on the weak side just because there's already a lot of paint thinner heavily mixed in with everything, so I feel like that kind of weakens the integrity of the paint itself. Not to a bad extent, but because it is on these moving parts, I'm noticing that does have a bit of an effect. For example, the knees and elbows have a lot of paint that's kind of just scraped off from bending the knees and bending the elbows, which is a shame. And it's the same thing with the chest armor. As I move it against the torso, if it has any type of bumps, because I'm not like manhandling this thing. I'm very carefully just twisting parts and moving them where I want them to go. But if there's any slight bump, it just seems like that's it. The paint just kind of wants to transition onto the next part. And it's a little bit of a disappointment, but I guess that's just to be expected. And then as I mentioned before, there was a bit of an issue with the top coating. So I used this clear flat coat as a layer of paint on top of everything, as you normally would. However, what I was using was actually an additive that's not supposed to be used as a paint. You're supposed to add it to your paint. On the one hand, I've done that before and had no issues. And the reason I had an issue here was because I didn't use enough thinner. And so that additive just kind of ate away at some of the paints. But on the other hand, I'm kind of glad this happened because it forced me to learn some stuff. Like I had to do some research and figure out why I was having issues with the top coating. And it was because I didn't realize that this was an additive. And I have actually thought about like, well, what if I just added top coat into my paint? So that way I can avoid that step altogether and just have it be flat, just straight as I paint it on. Because that would save me a lot of time if I could just mix the flat coat into the paint. That way I don't have to paint everything, wait for it all to dry, wait for another opportunity to get out all the equipment, and then spray on the top coat again on every single part. That takes up a lot of time, and if I could just add that clearness into the paint right off the bat, just spray it on as one thing, that saves so much time. So it forced me to learn that that is possible. That's actually what you're supposed to do with this particular type of paint. So we're just going to take the lessons where we can and say that's a win. I don't know what to tell you. The effect parts, I was a little concerned about just because I don't have a lot of experience with this type of stuff. It's, supposed to be a very natural flowing thing. And because it is just a plastic model, it's not going to be the case. It's going to be a static just piece. So I had to figure out the best way to paint it so it looked as natural as possible. Like there's motion going on without there being any actual motion. And I think I'm getting a little bit better. This is only really the second time I've ever tried doing effect parts in this type of way. The first time was on Super Saiyan 2 Gohan, which I do have a video coming out eventually. Who knows when? I think this looks better than the Gohan one, I will say. So we're a step in the right direction, but I also need to do more research, look at more references, and see how I could do a much better job because this looks good, but it's definitely not perfect. I just highlighted everything with white, and then with fluorescent paints, I added in some color, and then same thing, just went back and forth between white, fluorescent, a mixture of both, and then just tried to get everything as not seamless, but just blended as well as I could. And like I said, I think it's just a matter of practicing and trying it out again, just seeing where the shading should be, where the highlighting should be. Should it be directly on there? Should it be a circle? Should it be all connected? Should it be broken up? It's kind of what I'm messing with and trying to figure out. So overall, I'm pretty happy with this build. The real issues are just the paint chipping and then the seam lines, but those are things that are just gonna be there just as part of this whole process. If you want to get into model kits, you're just gonna have to learn to live with those types of things. So it's not the biggest deal, but at the same time, I am trying to think of ways to mitigate that and what I could do to prevent these issues in the future, because this is going to be a gift, and I hope that the person that gets it enjoys it. This is going to be for the Game Grumps. Hooray! I am a big fan of theirs. I think they're a nice little duo, Danny and Aaron. I very much enjoy their work. Obviously, if you know Game Grumps, you know that Aaron is a big fan of Megaman X, so I figured, well, I've got this in my backlog. Why not do it for him? And I'm kind of glad because as happy as I am with it, again, I really feel like if I did this a second time, obviously I could do a much better job just because you know what you know after the fact. Hindsight is always 20/20. So to Aaron, I hope you really enjoy it. I can't wait to send this off. It's going to be a fun little treat for me just knowing that you have this somewhere in your collection. I'm going to keep an eye out for all your videos, and hopefully one day I'll look on a shelf in the background and there it'll be. Who knows? So anyways, guys, until next time, well, see you then. Peace.